Hello and welcome to the Squeaky Bum Time Podcast with Mike and Laurent. It is Friday, October 15th, and thank God the Premier League is back. In this episode, we will wrap up the World Cup qualifiers and declare the new king of CONCACAF. But first, Mike, we have a report from Ranger Country.
Yeah.
Tell us what you have to say.
Well, all right. So here's what happens when
ice hockey Rangers.
Here's what happens when your sport stops after getting a good amount of momentum three times in the first 4 months.
In November.
That's what I'm saying. Again, it's going to happen again. People over here on this side of the pond stop giving a shit, right? So I don't know how much football I watched in the international break. It was a very small amount, but my true love, the National Hockey League, as abusive as they are to me, is back. And I had the pleasure and pain of watching the Rangers play twice this week. And as much as I would have rather taken my eyes out with a spoon, I sat through it. They got their shit pushed in by the Capitals last night. We're not going to dive into the whole why they are what they are now. There's just, frankly, there's not enough time. But
yeah,
tonight was interesting.
The positive, great thing you want.
Yeah, so tonight was great. Tonight was the Rangers home opener, and unfortunately, Mr. Ranger Rod Gilbert passed away a few months back. He was 80 years old, and that was the thing that was so shocking when I heard he passed, was that he was that old, because I had seen him. I've met him before. I have two really good stories in a second about him, but it was jarring, and they had a really beautiful tribute to him. They had all of his family there. The Rangers, for all their faults on the ice, they do a lot of the things like this right. And so it sort of, the pregame ceremony sort of brought a bit of a tear to my eye. It was really, really emotional and really well done.
I have a point. Rangers are the Spurs of hockey.
Well, it's funny you say that.
They are Tottenham Hotspur.
Because you say that, so I'll get 2 seconds into the game. But so the Rangers go down 2-0 early on, and then the second period is downhill running, right? And it felt like the Dallas Stars, who they were playing, legitimately, who have a good defensive team and not a whole lot on offense. They have some older players. They're not really all that great anymore. Certainly not what the Rangers have on offense. It felt like Mourinho's Spurs, and a shit bounce, and all of a sudden it's 2-1. And a shit bounce, and all of a sudden it's 2-2. And it was incredible watching it from the other side. It felt like the Crystal Palace game at Selhurst Park last season, where Spurs are up 1-0. They're like, nah, we got it. Fuck it. We're not going to cross midfield. And here comes Palace. Here comes Palace. Here comes Palace. They end up winning, they end up drawing that game, but it felt like a loss. The Rangers lost in overtime, which is why I sound a little more inebriated than usual, because I am. But the two stories I have about Rod Gilbert, one is a personal account. One is one I heard from one of the funniest people I've heard in sports media ever, Dave Maloney. He's the Rangers play-by-play guy, Rangers commentary, former Ranger from the 70s and 80s.
Famous for the 79 team more than anything.
He was one of the best players in the 1979 Rangers team. But the best part about him from my generation is that he's, like I said, he's the color guy on the radio, and he's a no-holds-barred kind of guy, right? If the Rangers stink, he put the radio on, because he'd be like, I don't know what they're doing. It's ridiculous. He doesn't know that he's unfiltered, is how I would describe him, right? And so he tells a story like this. He's in the pregame show, and he's in the Chase booth, which is the super swanky see-through lounge that the players walk by into the locker room. He's wearing a suit and tie, and he was a little bit older than Rod Gilbert by about, considerably older, 15 or so years, 20 years. And so when he was coming up in the early 70s, Rod Gilbert, Jean Rattel, and Vic Hadfield, the goal of game line, as they were known, they were towards the tail end of their careers. But there were a few years where they were hanging on. And he's a rookie, and he tells his story literally in the pregame tonight. He goes, I had a groin problem. So I was in the medical room, and I was in the tub, right? The ice tub. And I had never met Jean Rattel or Rod Gilbert before. And they walk into the room, and I'm in the tub, and I get all nervous. I see them, and I stand up, and I go, Rod, hi, I'm Dave Maloney. He doesn't say this part on TV. if anybody's ever been in an ice tub, you don't have pants on. This dude is just flapping to the wind, just dick flying everywhere, puts his hand out. And Rod Gilbert, for all his grace and all his class, goes, "Hi, Dave. Nice to meet you." Shakes his hand. He goes, "You can sit down now."
Nice. Good job,
So
Roger Villa.
he's just great. And honestly, I remember being at a game like 10 years ago, more than that, like 15 years ago. I was like in college, and I went with my dad, and we had really good seats in the corner. And Rod Gilbert sits the row in front of us. This is a true story. And my dad nudges me, elbows me. "You know what that is?" I'm like, yeah. We're like whispering to each other. We're like the weird guys with like the hot chick in class. Like, don't fucking say anything. "Do you know what that is?" "Yeah, Dad, I know." So he hears us, right? "That's Rod Gilbert. I fucking know it's Rod Gilbert." And at some point, he turns around and goes, "Hey, guys, how you doing?" And we're both in unison go, "Hi, Mr. Gilbert." Took pictures with him, shook his hand. I had like a 5-minute conversation with him. And he was sort of like it was like Rod Gilbert at Madison Square Garden was like a Mickey Mouse at Disney World. He just would kind of just float. And he was places all the time. And nobody loved it more than him. And I know that because I got to meet him that one time. So
Yeah.
it's sad and it's unfortunate. And this is what happens when your sport takes 2 weeks off every fucking month for the first 3 months of the season. People who host a sports podcast or a soccer podcast talk about hockey for the first.
Yeah, and our
6
numbers
minutes of
were
the
low.
episode.
What's wrong with you people?
Yeah.
So we should probably just wrap up the international break. I did watch. We had a very, very poor performance by the U.S. men's national team versus Panama away.
Oh, we talked about that.
We talked about it. It was a disaster.
Yeah.
Then we had the Ticos, who I remember Costa Rica being really good. 2014 World Cup. They played 5 at the back. What I didn't realize is they're still playing the same guys.
Well, Keylor Navas was the backbone of that team, right? Like
the guys are still there. It's still freaking Brian Ruiz. He literally got caught from behind because he was on a breakaway because he's 37. Their substitutions, they sent out 40-year-olds. Like, hey, Costa Rica, there's gotta be younger dudes out there. Like, it can't be the same crew that made the round of 16
it sort
in
of
the
makes
World
me
Cup.
wonder.
And I looked it up. It was exactly the same team.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
It makes me wonder, like, these smaller countries, like,
you run yourself out there, man.
Of course, but like, is it to the point where like the players become bigger than the country at that point? Because like they had such glory in 2014, and like they get to go until they don't want to go anymore, right? Like,
or conversely, you do like Gerard Piqué, who's like, yeah, I still play for Barcelona. I shouldn't be playing for Barcelona. Why am I still playing for Barcelona?
Well, because
you guys should have gotten rid of me. Right?
At the international level,
you have to love the club
choice.
enough to be like, hey, I'm retiring. Don't ask me to play because if I'm playing, something is wrong.
Right.
I'm sure Michael Bradley would still love to be playing midfield for the U.S.
Oh, God.
Thank God he isn't, because Tyler Adams was fantastic in that game. The U.S. gave it the first goal in the first 5 minutes. They did fight their way back in. Serginho Dest with a thunder cunt of a goal.
Yeah.
Really, really, really good. Mm-hmm. And that side between he and Weah was really good. They got a lot done. Again, the Ticos were old. Second half, U.S. had most of the ball. They really weren't pressured. They had one bad breakaway that Ruiz just literally could not run, which was really funny. But they still could knock the ball around. And then Tim Weah, again, that same side with Dest and Weah, just blasted past not Keylor Navas, who went out because he's old and he got hurt. And it did go through his near side. A goal that Navas saves, no problem. So the U.S. get their 6 points instead of the 7 that they really wanted, but they're doing fine. But I think you and I were talking about this, and our team chat has been talking about this. We specifically asked, hey, what do you guys want to talk about? And it was, I want to talk about fucking Canada. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about Canada. And I looked them up. Oof. They're really fucking good.
Hey, so all of the hubris of the North American soccer media, if you will, is all about what the U.S. does and doesn't do. And and for right reasons, right? Like Mexico's going to make it. Put it this way, Mexico's going to make it. But the rising storyline, and it has been for a while in CONCACAF has been the rise of Canada, because what you've got is US, Mexico is always 1 and 2 in whatever order you want. Costa Rica is pretty much there. And then you have a revolving door for 4. Right now, Canada is currently comfortably at the 3 spot. And you and I would argue deserving of at least the 2 spot, right? So not that all that matters much, as long as you're one of those first 3 spots. Who gives a shit? You're going, right? But yeah, I mean, shades of like 2013 Spurs with Bale, like just like give it to that guy. Fuck me. So why don't we cue it up, Laurent?
Yeah, we will. But one thing I do want to bring up, the difference, one of the differences that we have about Canada is they have real strikers. Kyle Laurent, real striker, plays in Besiktas. They have I think his name, I just was looking it up as I was chatting, and I lost it immediately. How did that happen? Okay. Oh, no, here it is. No, it's important. Frickin' frackin' fru. Oh, sorry, Jonathan David of Stade Rennes. He was the leading goal scorer of a champion team in France. Like, they have a real striker, not what we have, which is like, ooh, Pepe. Dude, the kid's 18 and plays in fucking Dallas.
Before we get into the headliner,
and they have a better fucking crowd. Like, no singing songs. They have a hockey crowd. They get it. Yeah, but yeah, let's get this sucker record.
Before we tee this up, let's talk about that for a second, because we spent an episode last season talking about how Germany plucks all of the greatest athletes from America in the 14-15 year, maybe a year later, and they teach them the technical part of the game that creates Pulisic, that creates a McKinney, that creates Gio Reyna, right?
Yeah, but Dortmund does it because they have to. The difference with Davies that we're going to is that he's on Dortmund.
No, he's on Bayern.
Bayern, right? Excuse me. He's on Bayern.
But like you said, there are players from Canada who have made their names not because here's the difference, not because they were attractive Americans coming from what is relatively known as up and coming soccer scouting hotbeds in the US. Canada is still completely unmined gold, right? And you've got, like you said, Kyle Laurent, perfect example. I hate the prick because I hate Orlando City because I live here. but he's great. Right, he scored against us.
And what you saw with Canada, and we can argue about it, is an immigrant community that has been paid attention to, so that when you see that national team, it's all Africans. They're Canadian. They're glad to be Canadian. They have a real immigration policy. They have a kid who's a refugee from, I think he was Ghana. I think Alphonso Davies is from Ghana. I'm not sure. I might have that wrong. But he comes up Vancouver, has one decent season, and Bayern grabs him for $10 million. Like, thanks.
Fun fact. I was at Alphonso Davies' last game in North America.
All right.
I was in Vancouver for that. It happened to be a work trip, and they were like, let's go to MLS game. And I was like, do we fucking have to? And and it was Alphonso Davies' last game. I'm pretty sure he scored. I was inebriated.
I had a funny thing. Same thing with Vancouver, probably going to see the guys. I flew a charter flight from Seattle to Vancouver, and those guys were flying coach. The whole team was in the plane.
Really?
They're all in their gear. I was like, I know who these people. I think I sat next to them. I just didn't chat with them. I was like, oh, this is an MLS team flying to Vancouver. So that was cool. Yeah, I flew with them too. But the reason why we want to bring this up is, one, because the U.S. had such a hard time with Panama, and Canada late in the game poured it on. But to show the power of Alphonso Davies, the king of CONCACAF, the best player in North America, bar none.
Yep.
He's incredible, and this play is going to really show it to you. So, Mike, just let me know when you've got it all set up so we can turn it on.
Ready. Hit it.
Not much in that.
So, look at the closing speed from Davies. He gets there, touches it around the player, makes the turn.
So stop it here, because stop it there. So go back a little bit, because for those who aren't watching those show live, right? Like, we're talking about, okay, there was a DeAndre Yedlin play that went viral.
Look at the difference. Look where he is.
5 years ago. Yeah. And like 5 or 6 years ago, it was DeAndre Yedlin who had this closing speed of like 25 yards in like insane, like 2 seconds. Like it was nuts. This is like that, except the DeAndre Yedlin play, he like kicked it out for a throw in or something. And
What
as
is
you
he?
watch this,
Is
go
he-
ahead,
is
go ahead,
he-
play it
is he
from here.
25? Is he 15 yards behind him?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's
David
very
can't
similar
find his
to
way.
the DeAndre Yedlin play, but
He
the
flies
pirouette,
past him.
Did he keep
but he
that
makes
in?
a
Alphonso
pirouette
Davies.
on the
He has
line,
kept it in.
comes in on a 2-on-2
2v2 here. Can he get
situation,
the first one?
just
Yes, he
absolutely leaves the defender for
can.
dead and
Alphonso
scores
Davies.
short side. That's not what DeAndre Yedlin did.
The 20-year-old.
I mean,
So-
and look at this crowd. I mean, this is notorious
It looked
Canadian.
like the
I mean,
ball
look
was
at on the
lost. Let's see
line.
what
I mean,
happened here.
this is pure fucking class.
So here's what
We
I
don't
would
have a
say
player
about-
like
It looks
this.
like
All right. No, of course not. What I would say about the
Oh,
crowd,
God. What an incredible.
what I would say
incredible
about the crowd is that I know these people. They're very similar to me. Some of them speak a little bit of better French than I do, but that's pretty much the only difference. They are so calcified. They have not seen any of their teams win anything since 1993, right? The 5% of them in that crowd, right? And so Blue Jays or fucking Canadians, realistically, is a good year for Canada. But the thing that they've had, it's found money. It's whimsical.
And they're going to host the World Cup and be really good.
Yeah, but you got to understand from a Canadian fandom perspective, it's all good, right? It's similar to how you and I used to see the Premier League. I get the feeling that we're sort of stuck in our ways with like other sports now, but the best part I always felt over the last 10 years about being even a Spurs supporter, for fuck's sake, was as a Yankee fan growing up, as a Ranger fan growing up, it was I've inundated myself, I've saturated myself with everything about the game, and I've become, I know everything, I've heard everything, I've seen it all before. I'm calcified, like, yeah, awesome, like I'm tired, right? and it's because I know the trends. I know what's going to happen. And part of the beauty of the Premier League was the emotion. You talk about it all the time in the show, the unpredictability and how it grabs you by the
They have the third
shirt.
estate. The supporters
Right.
are in the game. They are part of, they have a
Yes.
stake. Somehow they've put themselves into this thing. And that's probably in some sense going to take us into our Newcastle discussion down the road. But that stake, that piece, the Canadians have it more
that's
than
what I mean.
American
Well,
fans do. Somehow.
No.
We're
No, here's
doing something wrong.
Hold on. We found it 11 years ago, right? We found it in 2010. That Donovan goal and like the 4 or 5 year stretch that followed, that
through
was
14, through to the Howard game.
Yes. That's what
happens when
golden.
you missed the fucking World Cup.
Oh, of course. We're playing from behind by quite a bit because all of that momentum, and frankly, all of the momentum that was carried on by the women's team, as much as they want to make you think that they're at odds, they're actually working on the same plane, right? And they're kind of building on each other. But the men dropped the ball big time. And in doing so, it's almost like they opened the door for Canada to kind of awaken, right? And
even open the door for Europe, like this Euros, like we talked about how it seemed to be in the air. It's just like the U.S. Where is when you miss the World Cup, that's 8 years.
Yeah.
You're gone.
Mm-hmm.
No fucking third column in PTI. No Uncle Tony. No nothing. You're fucking gone.
Right. And all the while, you've had, again, we're talking about CONCACAF, right? This is not a difficult qualifier.
No.
So a team like Canada with 2 to 3 quality players and relative shit on the rest of their team.
They could make 2 World Cups if Panama can make it.
They can absolutely.
And Costa Rica can get out of the group phase. Canada can absolutely make it with fucking Davies.
Well, so that's the thing, is that like,
and Jonathan.
I look at this moment that we're in right now, and I see it as Canada's 1990, right? Canada's like, I don't remember how long it had been since the U.S. because there was a long time between World Cup births.
The U.S. made 90. That was
Yeah,
the
that's
first
what I
one.
mean. When they
Yes,
qualified
in
for
Italy.
90,
Yes,
when they qualified in the late 80s, right?
for sure. Yeah,
They hadn't qualified in
since
20
the
years.
50s or something. Yeah,
Yeah, something like that. So that was a I don't know. If you look back at the last 35, 40 years in US soccer, there's 4 to 5 moments you can pick out of your head. And you're like, these were elbows. These were inflection points in the trajectory of US soccer. And you're looking at one right now in the same trajectory for Canadian soccer. You're looking at Alphonso Davies leading a revolution, not unlike a young Landon Donovan did in 2002, right?
sure.
Because that's one of those points, right? When they
Yeah,
made the
sure.
quarterfinals, when they beat Mexico, when they beat Portugal.
Sure.
So Luis Figo's Portugal. I remember that shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you're looking at the second coming effectively of North
A moment.
America's Landon Donovan, but
A
he's
moment.
not
Yeah.
wearing the red, white,
Oh,
and blue.
he's way better than Landon Donovan.
Oh, I understand, but relative to the importance of
Yeah.
that one player had to their country and their national team.
Yeah.
He's
He could be more in the Bale range, where basically Bale has taken
certainly.
Wales and put Wales into major tournaments, getting to a semifinal. And now they've played so much together that Wales wins games without him because they have forged a unit.
Yes.
Right? That's what happens in
Here's
small
the
country
difference.
national teams. They forge units. Like, look at Denmark.
So
Denmark is undefeated in qualifying now
okay,
since the Eriksson thing.
I know.
They forge into units.
I have a hard time sitting here and saying Canada belongs in that echelon of the Denmarks and the Wales because you know what?
They could.
Alphonso Davies is as good or better than the players who have taken those teams to those levels, at least age appropriate, right? At his age 20, Bale or Eriksson or whoever else, right?
Oh, he's better.
Without
Yeah, he's
question.
better. Yeah.
But
And
you
way
gotta
more
understand,
athletic. Like, he can fly. Holy
sure,
shit.
but it's not about him at this point, right?
Yeah.
In their qualifying, Wales and Denmark had a hard time because their qualifying was far more difficult than Canada's. Canada's going to skirt by, but when they get to the big tournaments, when they
They're
get to,
get killed.
frankly, when they get out of CONCACAF, when they go to the big world, when they go to the World Cup,
Yeah.
the thing about Wales, the reason that why they're able to galvanize, and actually, I think they almost made it out of the group in the Euros, and the reason why Denmark was able to go on a run, aside from their best player having a fucking heart attack on the field, was that they have an 11 of European quality players,
Yeah.
right? Scattered across the top 5 leagues, wherever you want. But
Yeah.
Wales has a number of Premier League starters, or at least like close to first team. And Denmark certainly has, hi, Kat. Denmark has a number of players scattered across the top 5 leagues.
Yeah.
Canada doesn't have that. Canada has players who belong in those conversations. Kyle Laurent, as you mentioned, he's not quite top 5, but he's knocking on the door.
Yeah. He's pretty good.
They have a superstar, and that's exactly they're just a shit Wales for me.
Right, but they may lose games because their defense is basically MLS quality. They may lose games because they don't have a class goalkeeper. But what they do have is an outball and a guy who can fly and destroy things. And you know what? Newcastle should buy him.
That's a great call, and I'm gonna let you have that segue in 1 minute. In 1 minute, but in a big tournament, right? If you're managing any top, call it 20 team in the world, could be from any fucking confederation, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If you're playing against Canada, is your defense not playing insanely lopsided to the right? Just like, no.
You have to.
No, go ahead. You can have the whole fucking left side. I dare you. We're not going to let you
they
beat
need
us
to
down the
develop
right.
another guy. They need another guy.
We're going to dare you, Canada.
Yeah. You go grab Conte and you put Conte on him. Or you take Pogba and you put Pogba on him.
Not even France. I'm not talking about France.
Dude, no, but
France
anybody. Someone put someone on him. But what we just saw in that video is that guy can get away from you.
Right. But what I'm talking about is Ghana. Anybody, right? Anybody who's going to be a threat to the World Cup round of 16 has a scheme to stop a one-man band Canada, right? What Canada needs to make Alphonso Davies as good as he possibly can be is It's the same thing as every good wide receiver in the NFL ever. If he has a secondary receiver who's pretty good, or he almost makes the second receiver good, right? You could see that. You can see a guy who plays above his quality because he's like, oh, fuck, I'm wide open all the time. That's awesome. Then you have to respect both threats. But until then, I mean, Canada will make the World Cup. I'm not worried about that. But on the world stage, I don't see them making a lot of noise. As much as I hate them from a hockey perspective, and I'm wearing a Quebec Major Junior jersey right now, I do sort of like them. I like them. I'm excited to watch them on the world
they
stage.
really don't have deep quality. Like, it's Junior Hoylett. I'm looking at their roster. It's guys from Toronto FC. There's a guy who plays at
you know what they are?
Basel.
They're Norwich. They're not going to back down. They're going to go after you.
They're going to play. They're going to play. And it's exciting. It's cool.
Would you rather that, or would you rather Panama or Trinidad and Tobago or some shit teams? You know,
the other thing is,
Latin
I looked up their coach Hurd. What's interesting is he's integrated. He's developed the entire women's team, which Canada was right there with Sinclair. Mm-hmm. He took New Zealand to the World Cup as women. So he's gone from the women to the men. And as the men, he's also the technical director and has gone from under 14 all the way up. So he knows the entire, I mean, it's Canada. There's 40 million people. He literally knows every good player in Canada and has gone to look for them.
He is what we thought Klinsmann was going to be.
Right. But Klinsmann was too big to do the dirty work.
But he is
in his mind.
I think he was a facade because he wanted
he's
to
a phony.
do that.
Yeah. He didn't want to do the groundwork.
He wanted to have delegates he could trust. And when he got here, he went, uh-oh. Right? He's like, oh boy, I can't trust anybody. I have to do it all. This is
right, exactly. Like
country.
He's the one who hired Jorgi Low, who ended up taking Germany for wherever.
Exactly.
So we've got it, Mike. We have to get to the Premier League. We're a half hour in. We've talked about Canada for 20 minutes.
It's more fun. You know what? Your sport took a day off for 2 weeks.
So
the
big news is still around Newcastle and what they're going to do. The entire British media is just in depth with really forgetting about the Saudi Arabia stuff. They sort of give a short shrift to human rights abuses. So they don't care.
Day and a half.
Yeah, they're over it already. There's going to be like The Guardian will keep writing about it. But really now they want to go, okay, who's going to manage them? We had Brendan Rodgers at 2-1 at the bookies. And he's, of course, saying, I'm not going to leave. This is the man who said, I'm not going to leave Swansea for Liverpool. He left Swansea for Liverpool. I'll never leave Celtic in the middle of the season. I'll see the season out. He left Celtic in the middle of the season to go to Leicester. So he's 2-1 to take on the Newcastle job.
They should shoot higher than Brendan Rodgers.
No, I don't think they should.
No?
I think Brendan Rodgers is actually the right choice for right now.
Okay. Well, why?
Because he is a developer of young players. He knows the Premier League. Okay. He doesn't need to really win anything just yet, but he will get that team playing with the players they have in a way that's exciting and people will want to watch. And when they get good and it's time to win, they get another coach.
Okay. The person I had in mind, who you know very well who it is all of those same things. Except he has managed big egos before.
Who?
Mauricio Pochettino.
He's also actually a really good candidate in that he can start from zero and really sort of work within this concept and whatever. Doesn't have to deal with the PSG baggage and Messi and how basically you can't coach that team. It's uncoachable.
No.
Yeah. I mean, if Tuchel can't coach that team, nobody can coach that team.
Well, I was about to say, like, we learned a lot more about Tuchel watching the English media darling and my good friend Mauricio Pochettino go there, and you just get all right in the same way that Pep Guardiola swallows up all the egos in Man City's dressing room.
Neymar sucks the fucking ego to him.
Exactly. It's the opposite. It's not even. It's not just Neymar. It's Neymar.
No, it's the whole. The players run that team.
Right. It was Thiago Silva when he was there. It was
whoever
a number of players.
Right. It's not. Right? It's not a coach-driven, personality-driven.
If it were one player, that's manageable. but there's like 5.
It's 5 of them, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And
So
to be fair, as much as Messi is great and he's a one-man team, he's really hard to coach. Like, they gave him everything. He does whatever the fuck he
yeah.
wants, right? And so when they play the 3 of them, they can't defend. So you get to luck into what essentially is the biggest event in Newcastle in 15 years,
Yeah.
and your team has to go to St. James's Park and try and play that game. I believe that you are fucked so bad that I am actually taking the money line for Newcastle in that game.
I actually think this might be all right. I whined about the international break. I actually think this might be a case of it's been so overhyped that like we're past
Maybe
the
they won't
prime
show up.
of it.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I like. However, this is the first match at
What
St.
we
James Park.
need, dear bookies, stop. We need the under over on the amount of Geordies wearing chic
God.
gear in the stands. What's the under over? Is it 500? Is it 5,000?
No, it's a percent. It's a percent of
Of the crowd?
capacity. It's a percent of capacity, and it's
Well,
like
it's sold out. We know it's 55,000 Geordies are going to be in that stadium.
It's like 4%.
Which I don't know if you know this. It's at the top of the hill. St. James's Park is like a cathedral overlooking the city of Newcastle. It is the most important thing in that shithole town that's in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. And so, okay, I'm glad you mentioned that. That is an important factor for people who are footballers. You have to live in Newcastle, dude.
You have to live in and it's not close. I mean, listen, it's scale. Like, as Americans, we can't really understand. It's really small. Like, it's close to each other, but
it's the size of New York State. We always say that as a scale.
But it's Burlington, Burlington, Vermont. What's this? It's Plattsburgh. It's the last city in the corner of New York.
Okay.
Has the stadium in the middle of nowhere. And then like Manchester is like being in Binghamton, Syracuse area, kind of shitty. And then London is New York.
Yeah.
Basically.
Right.
And Birmingham is Albany, kind of scale wise. Right. So it's really just the farthest place from where anything is. And it's its own area. Like, they have their own culture. It's on the other side of the mountains. It's fucking weird up there. They're called Geordies. They have their own goddamn language. They're called the Toon Army because they don't know how to pronounce the word town. They say Toon.
So right, exactly. I think it's a harder draw than Manchester. It's certainly a harder draw than London. It's
what they are with and the other pieces are. I'm fired up because I know about this stuff. The English media keep talking about it like it's a big team, It's a big team in England. It's not a big team worldwide. Like, nobody knows who this team is.
Let me stop you right there. 10 years ago, what was it? 12 years ago. More. Who the fuck was Manchester City?
Oh, true. Exactly. The only reason they bought Manchester City is because it's in Manchester and it has the name Manchester.
Right.
Right? That's the reason why Paris Saint-Germain, all of a sudden, it used to be equal billing of Paris Saint-Germain. They made the Saint-Germain really small and it just says Paris. They're like, we're buying the team in Paris, right?
Yeah.
So if you think football, you think Manchester, and then you go, Manchester City? Oh, is that? No, the other one. So they're buying the city, right? They get like Manchester itself is in the name. So yes, it's not as big a team. Listen, Manchester City wasn't a big team ever, right? Like, it was a local East Side team. It was the Mets to the Yankees. Like, not even. It was the Islanders to the Rangers, which is probably worse, I'd say.
No, actually, the first, that relative to championships, that actually makes. I don't want to talk about it.
It doesn't. They're never winning a championship again. That was a weird time. Don't worry about it.
I know.
So we have that. We've got Newcastle going there. We've got that. We've got our friend Ranieri returning, taking over for Watford, playing Liverpool.
Oh yeah, that happened.
Super duper. Yeah, that happened. They fired their coach and Ranieri got hired, and then 2 hours after Ranieri got hired, the Newcastle thing happened. So his whole story got swallowed. We had a whole moment to talk about Leicester winning the league, but that's all gone. So
I
we
would
just have to.
never like to talk about that again in my life. I would rather die before we talk about that again. Because you know
Leicester?
why?
Sure, go ahead.
I was the only team that didn't love Leicester winning the league. I was the only one that wasn't like, this is super awesome. Fuck those
No, I
idiots.
was
No,
not.
that
This is
was cool.
super awesome.
That was cool.
That was
But I
awesome.
will always dislike Riyad Mahrez for that year. I don't know why
Yeah.
it's not Vardy. Because, like,
Because Vardy's awesome.
all right, when I think of Jamie Vardy, I always think about the one-touch goal at Anfield. And from, like, far right of the box, right? I think Mahrez from, like, the other side of the halfway line plays him on – it's like plays him on the right side, and he sees – it wasn't Allison. It was some shithead goalkeeper that Liverpool had at that point, one of those horrible ones that lost them all the important games. Just dinks it over him from, like, 35 yards. Never had a chance. And I went, oh, that was fucking sick. Like I can't even in good conscience say I didn't love watching Leicester win the league, but it was at our expense. And I will never be able to, it's just never going to sit right with me. Right. And I get it's perfectly Spursy and all that stuff. We beat everybody in the league except for the 5,001 fucking, underdog. Although Arsenal will say that they finished ahead of us that year, but yeah, nobody was paying attention. Nobody fucking cares. But yeah,
Mike,
I
I have an
hate 'em.
unfortunate news. I may have to let you fly this thing home because I have breaking news of parenting.
Okay,
Parenting. So, Mike, take it away. I have to go rescue my
I'm
wife
going to talk about
from.
hockey for 20 minutes. No.
If I pop back, I'll let you know.
Don't worry
But in
about
the
it.
meantime, you're driving. Talk about my best bets. Talk about my parlay. Talk about Manchester City scoring 20 goals to Burnley's 1. I'm no longer afraid of George Boyd, and I
I
shall
have your
return.
bets. And we're going to actually get into the Premier League weekend that is to come. But before we do that, I want to talk about, obviously, our friend Joe at Attitude of Gratitude Consulting. And I got to get rid of this brand thing that we got. There we go. That's just me now. Joe at attitudegratitudeconsulting.com is a great guy. He's been helping us with all of our financial consulting, all of our needs. The wedding, Aveline's college, which is why Laurent just left the show. And the next thing for me is buying a house. So it's a bunch of things, whatever you're working on in your life. I mean, everybody's got their own stuff, right? But Joe is a great guy. He's a family man. And you go to attitudeofgratitudeconsulting.com. You'll see his phone number right there. Give him a call. Tell him we sent you. And he'll take good care of you. I know personally that he's an awesome guy, and he's waiting to talk to you. So trust me. Again, one more time, attitudeofgratitudeconsulting.com. So we talked a little bit about, some of the games that are coming up this weekend. Laurent has some wacky bets this weekend. I have gotten my shit kicked in hockey, so I'm going to be honest with you guys. I am not going to have any best bets this weekend. I do have one or two, but I don't know. But the game I want to talk about the most, and the game I'm most excited for, is the 12:30 game on Saturday, 12:30 Eastern, I should say. It is not Leicester City Man United, which is probably the biggest build game of the weekend. It is not Newcastle Tottenham, which obviously after the takeover in Newcastle is the sort of headliner, I suppose. It is the Brentford Bees hosting Chelsea Football Club. And I just think that Thomas Frank, Ivan Toney, the boys, I think they're going to cause Chelsea some problems this weekend. And I think that they've had 2 weeks. And I think, and so much as I've bitched and moaned about the international break for the entire show so far, and I hope you've enjoyed that because it's probably coming. I think that the advantage for smaller teams like a Brentford, who is so close-knit and so, we talk about the Englishness, the spirit, and all that stuff. They also didn't have anybody go anywhere, which dovetails into an entire conversation, which we will get into with Laurent at some point, about how Ivan Toney should get an England call-up, potentially at the expense of Harry Kane. What, Mike? How dare you? But they haven't really gone anywhere for 2 weeks. They've gotten a game plan for Chelsea for 2 full weeks, and I think that at home in a evening-ish crowd, I think they're going to take it to the Blues. That's something that I'm really, really excited for. I want to see. It's going to be a chess match. So it's one of the things that NBC has done well is, generally speaking, they have. I don't know how much say they've had in this, and I don't know how much importance it is relative to England and having the primetime game on Saturday nights. So for that, I don't know who's to credit for this. But generally speaking, the 12:30 game on a Saturday afternoon in the fall, mostly all season, but especially in the fall, is always a can't miss. And once again, like, you look at this slate and you go, Leicester Man City is the biggest game. And you'd be right to say so, right? Like, but if you look at the way these teams are playing this year, you look at Leicester's been shitty, to say the least, right? And United's faltered and whatever. Frankly, from the narrative perspective, and again, if Laurent were here, he would be screaming and yelling about how this is a game that United will lose, and he's not wrong. But man, I find myself as a purist, just inject some more Brentford into my fucking veins, please. And that's where I'm at. So I see one of my best bets, or we're actually going to rephrase that. We're no longer calling them best bets, because if you look at our record, Laurent is 5-14 and I'm 3-9-1. We're going to call it crap bets. So from here on out, it is the Squeaky Bum Time crap bets. But my first crap bet is Brentford to get a result. Now, I haven't gotten odds on this yet because my book is dog shit. But what I would suggest is a double chance for Brentford, is a win or draw, because their win is plus 600. Their draw, I believe, not without looking, is like plus 285. So a double chance is still going to be plus money. And they're at home, again, in a night-ish game against Chelsea. This just feels like one where Chelsea's going to drop points. They're just ready for them. So very, very excited. If you listen to the show, usually, you know where I'm specifically all about Brentford. But so maybe this is becoming like a weird Homer-ish, like maybe like we're bordering on fetish at this point. But I'm super excited about that. But if you move to the rest of the slate, so here's what you do. You look at it once over, you go, there's really not that many great games this week. And then you start to drink it in a little bit more and you go, wow, okay. Arsenal's playing Palace. They never play Palace well, and Palace is playing a different style than they normally do. They're really going after teams, and that's the Monday night game, right? So that's the tail end of the week. You've got Everton, West Ham, a match of two teams who are trying to figure out sort of who the hell they are in the top 10, if they both belong there. So that's sort of a knife fight. Man City, Burnley could be a stat night. It could be a 5-0 game. I'm huge on Aston Villa Wolves. I'm a big fan of that. Obviously, as we know, there have been some hard luck losses for Wolves early in the season. Villa, we're still trying to figure out what they are. And we're also dealing with the Argentinian contingent again for Aston Villa with Emi Martinez and Emi Buendia. So there's a lot to really dissect there. Again, the same way that I said about Brentford, it seems like Wolves might be a little bit on the advantage of less players on the international break, right? They've gotten the opportunity to stay home. It's sort of a derby, but I'm still liking Wolves going away there. Don't put that down as one of my crap bets because, well, I've got plenty of crap in the meantime. But I want to talk about Newcastle Tottenham because there are obviously a few storylines coming out of the Newcastle game, or the Newcastle news, I should say. The first one, and I've only seen from my Twitter followers, from the people I follow on Twitter, how so ridiculous of me to suggest the otherwise. I would say like Tuesday, earlier in the week, I saw like, okay, Newcastle's interested in Dele Alli. And I simultaneously had two thoughts. First one, why? And this comes from arguably one of the world's biggest Dele Alli fans. But I just don't understand what if you're trying to transform your team and you're trying to create a new identity in Newcastle. And oh, by the way, if you have unlimited funds, you could spend untold amounts of money. And frankly, you wouldn't even have to spend that much. And Dele Alli would have no place in that team. So I was confused by that. But conversely, the second thought as a Tottenham fan was, oh, you have money's no object. Oh, well, we just slapped a 75 million price tag on Dele Alli, which obviously is so ridiculous. He's barely worth a third of that. But yeah, I thought that was strange. And then, of course, right on time, the second Tottenham-related Newcastle storyline was the same one you've heard for 7 years. Harry Kane on the Newcastle radar. It's October 15th. This storyline is right on time, friends. It's insert team, insert club, insert country. If England could sell him, they would have too, right? Or they would have been rumored to. I'm not saying that he'll stay in Tottenham forever. What I am saying is I spent the first half of the show talking about how the Canadian fans are new here and they're not jaded and they're not calcified. Well, I've spent 7 years defending the fact that Harry Kane probably isn't going to go anywhere, right? He's going to go to Manchester United. Jose Mourinho really wants. He's going to go to Real Madrid. He's going to go to Manchester City. He's going to go back to Real Madrid. He's going to go to Real Madrid. No, this time he really is going to go to Real Madrid. Pochettino might take him to PSG. Every single time. And I'm not going to go into the whole diatribe about how Spurs are, the underprivileged children in the conversation here. Please, sir, I want some more. But I'm not going to go into the whole agenda against them, but it has, trust me, for 7 years been a story of Harry Kane is either too good for Spurs, he doesn't play well with Spurs, he should move, or he needs to move to win trophies, or there's been like 5 to 6 storylines, but that's basically been the rotating cycle, right? So of course, the difference is now that we said no to 150 million or thereabouts from Manchester City this year, and I'm glad we did. And I'm not saying because and Laurent is back. I'm not saying so. I'm finishing up my Harry Kane thought about him in Newcastle. I'm not saying because I think because I'm sure you heard the news. By the way, Laurent is back, friends. My point that I was making was if Kane were to go for the first time in 7 years, I'm sort of okay with it at this point. Like there's just so much fatigue that you can see in his eyes, and you heard him talking about it when England dropped points over this last break, and he for the first time from a forward-facing perspective, you could hear that he was like, I'm just.
He's burnt. He's burnt out.
And
he's burnt out. Yeah.
By the way, he took him 3 years longer than everybody the fuck else. I started this segment by saying Newcastle on Tuesday was rumored to have Dele Alli, and my first instinct was why. But then that quickly moved to Kane. So anytime that there's any, dissent among the ranks at Spurs, it's there's a feast or famine sort of feeling, right? And it's he should leave because he can't score, or he should leave because he's scoring too much, right? So
the thing I think with Kane and why I was so wishy-washy with him is I generally think that he's got a lot of mileage on him, and not that he's done or whatever, but that he needs a break, and he needed to go to City and be in that not 32 to 38 game range in the league. He's not he needs to not be playing 50 to 55 games a year. He needs to be in that 40, 41 games a year range, playing big games, not saving teams when they're down to Krasnodar. And he's like, "Are you fucking kidding me? I had to fly out here, and now I got to save this game." That I'm the man for England. I'm the man for everything was weighing on him. He needed to go to City to not play.
Yeah.
To get
And
rejuvenated.
by the way,
and be like, hey, this is really hard.
You know who the big
play at
winner
City.
of that would have been is England.
Spurs. Yes, for sure.
No, not Spurs, because they would have shit on the money. They would have fucking bought some idiot and it would have sucked. No, England would have been the big winner because instead of at the end of every season, he shows up looking like a beaten dog. He shows up like after whatever trophies he wins at Manchester City, like hungry to lead England to victory. Like, not that he didn't and he wasn't and he doesn't continue.
And I think he needs
physically, he's just not there.
If he wants to be in the Lewandowski Cristiano phase, he needs to get like, I think he's super fit, but he needs to get to like weirdo, sinewy, late stage Madonna fit where like your arm is just muscle and you're almost a skeleton and you eat nothing but the perfect food all the time. Like he needs to go in that TB12. Actually, I don't even think he's probably already on TB12. He needs to find out what Cristiano's doing and get into that weird sinewy muscle mode where he's not even like a human anymore.
Six packs. It's okay. And this is not, I'm not, I want this to be very clear. I'm not taking a slight on anybody who ever chooses not to do this. That takes a sociopath to do that.
Yes, it does.
Right?
I agree. Yeah.
Harry Kane is he's towing that line to sociopath as hard as he can, while also he has 3 kids. He's in a wife.
Well, I think that's his first problem. Well, Cristiano has like 47 kids. Yeah,
but he doesn't have a wife, and he doesn't have. They're not in one house. He doesn't.
I don't know what's Cristiano just does Cristiano things.
Listen,
Nobody.
I'll say this.
I just love the juxtaposition, right? When we talked about Rooney versus Cristiano, like I was looking up, Rooney was done at 31.
Yeah, that was nuts.
Completely washed up.
Think about this.
And now he looks like 100 years old. He's 35 years old.
You want to know what's not holding Ronaldo back? He doesn't have a cheering section in the front row of little kids wearing daddy jerseys number 7. Right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying what a horrible, inhumane comment for me to make. But if you dial it back a little bit, that's why he's he's like the football version of Pat Bateman.
Yeah.
Right? He's Portuguese psycho. That's what he is. Right? So oh, good for you. How was it? Like that's Cristiano Ronaldo.
Yeah.
And so unless you're willing to go all the way, not 99, 100% of the way to Portuguese Patrick Bateman, you're not going to be Cristiano Ronaldo.
There's only one, right?
Not going to be.
And but maybe try and be Lewandowski, right? But Mike, we're actually running low on time because there is a timer that won't let us stream this if we go over an hour.
Okay.
So let's get to the best bets because I think that's what people are wanting.
I touched on yours a bit, but go for it. I talked about mine already.
Yeah, so I'm sure you talked about Brentford being the greatest team ever.
I sure did.
They are. Yeah. Okay.
It's like you never left.
Okay. So I'm looking at the Everton draw versus West Ham. I think that's the Monday game. That's Moyes versus freaking Benitez. Nobody wants the ball in that game. I don't know who's going to be counterattacking who. But that's draw all written all over it at plus 235. Sure. We talked ad hominem about Newcastle and the absolute Newcastle. Lunatic asylum that it's going to be at St. James's Park. That it could be, you could be running into an Anfield moment, like where it's just like, oh fuck, I say Maximen's running past Eric Dyer, scoring goals and whipping his dick out, and people putting little red fucking rugs on his dick. Because it's now the crown prince of fucking, like that's going to happen. So that's Newcastle money line. Then Leicester against Manchester United. I just think Varane, no defense. Leicester has to play better eventually. Like, they can't just keep sucking, and they've got to beat United. And I'm going with my theory. Better coaching versus Ole. Pick the better coach.
I called it when you were.
Yeah.
It's like you never left.
Yeah. And then my last one is this insane 14 parlay at plus 940, 9,400, which is
not
all
940.
draw.
No. Let's
9,400.
Let's just underline that for the listeners. There's a 14 parlay out there, which we advise you not to bet on. That is plus 9,400, which means if you bet $100 on this, which you shouldn't, you would win $9,400. Also known as, if you bet $100 on this, you will lose $100.
$100. Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
It's okay. It's Palace draw no bet versus Arsenal. I'm taking Newcastle again. The Brentford one's the real outlier. They're plus 600 money line. That's going to be tough. And then Leicester. So I'm doubling down, but I'm really just wanted to get Brentford in, but I didn't want to put Brentford in as a plus 600 long shot. So I just wanted to do this crazy one just to see what happens.
So you do believe in Brentford. They're home. They're at a night game. They've had 2 weeks off. Chelsea's had players flying all around the fucking world. Brentford's getting a result. That's what we're going out on. Did it.
Okay. Thanks for Mike for taking the wheel while Mike was at the wheel, not Ole, but
the
Mike.
last 20 minutes sucked.
That was the Squeaky Bum Time Podcast with Mike and Laurent. We record on. What do we do? Oh, we are the Football Wing of the Shop Sports Network. We record on Tuesdays and Fridays, so that be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast, so you never miss an episode and you never have to parent in the middle of your episodes like a Stuka bombing the French Riviera and World War II. And if you're listening on Apple, please review the show because it makes a huge difference for us, and we survive just under the line of 60 minutes. Let's go Rangers. Let's go Rod Gilbert. Let's go get better graphics so that we don't have to have this weird box ever again.